there are many people around the world, in the West as well, claiming that in some real sense, Ukraine isn't an independent state. It's part of Russia. It has been historically. It's not Germany. It's not a country with a clear, like, historical existence. It's a, and so what do you? So you're obviously not very happy with that argument, but that is being made continually. And so
I know. I'm laughing because you mentioned Germany, and the natural,
right.
that of course Germany is naturally a country. Really? That wasn't a natural thought until 1871.
Right. Well, we forget about how difficult it was for those countries we think were forever around to unify themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and look, there was historically a lot of argument about exactly what Germany was. And then of course Hitler had a view.
You mean like World War II?
Right. And then of course Hitler had a view of what Germany included, and it included things like Austria and Czechoslovakia. And we persuaded the Germans that was not the case after some considerable effort. The analogy is apt because you can look at Austrians and say, well, they're Germans. Well, they speak German. They're Catholics. The dominant religion in Germany is Protestantism. Austrians are largely Catholic. You can tell when you get into Austria and southern Germany, by the way, when the greeting changes from Guten Tag to Grüß Gott.
Right. There's also no shortage of dialectical variation across the hypothetically unified German language.
Exactly.
Like extreme dialectical variation.
Exactly right. So we've got to not just imagine that the blocks that we're used to in Europe were always that way or have been for centuries, because that's not true either.
So then how do we reliably identify when there is a country?
Well, okay, let me come back to that because there's a straightforward answer to that one. But it was the Kenyan president or prime minister, whom I can't believe I'm quoting approvingly because I rarely approve of anything that he has to say, but who put this very well recently in a very, very strong statement that, look, if we want to get into the business of talking about how it should be the case that all peoples who identify ethnically with other peoples should be unified in single states, then you are signing the world up for global war on a Hobbesian scale of a sort that we have never seen. Because look at Africa, look at Asia,
look at Canada.
I'll leave that to you, Jordan. But how many countries in the world actually are drawn that way? Virtually none.
Right. So the fundamental point here is that mere linguistic historical similarity is not a sufficient condition for presuming a superordinate autonomy.
Exactly.
And so we have other mechanisms
we do
to decide what a country is.
And they're very straightforward mechanisms. We live in a world where there is a United Nations and there is a body of states. And the community of states recognizes a new member by recognizing it. And we say, we recognize you as an independent state, and we establish diplomatic relations with them, and we give them a seat in the United Nations, and then they are a state with all of the rights that any other state has. We did that with all of the states of the former Soviet Union. And Russia signed up to all of that.
When did that happen?
In 1991.
Ukraine?
In 1991, 1992, all of the states, all of the former Soviet states, including Russia, were recognized as independent states, established diplomatic relations with the world. That's the only standard there is.
Okay, so that goes back to your initial claim that what Putin is doing was, you said, unprovoked, unwarranted, and illegal. So now we've established the illegality element of that. It's like he had signed agreements, or Russia had signed agreements stating that as far as they were concerned, Ukraine was a country among other countries.
And more than that, they did something even more. Because when the Soviet Union fell, parts of its nuclear arsenal were still in 3 other countries, in Belarus, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. And we worked very hard to persuade those countries, we, the United States and Great Britain, worked very hard to persuade those countries to give their nuclear arsenals back to Russia, because we were very concerned about the threat of nuclear proliferation. So we pressed
they
them,
did, and they did. Right,
And
right.
in return for that, in 1994, we, Britain and Russia, signed an agreement with Ukraine committing to respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine as it was recognized at the time, in return for Ukraine handing back those nuclear weapons. The Russians signed that treaty. The Russians have just violated a treaty that they specifically signed with Ukraine, recognizing it in its territorial integrity as it was in 1994.
Who signed that on Russia's behalf?
Yeltsin.
That was Yeltsin. Okay, so Putin hypothetically doesn't feel that he's bound by that agreement, but within the framework of international law, he is.
He is. I mean, he can regard himself however he wants to, but he is. So not only did Russia recognize Ukraine as a country, but it specifically recognized Ukraine in the borders that it had in 1994.